Well, we had a call of a man who was despondent in his yard who fired a gun. We were told that he was intoxicated, on medication, had some mental issues. So we arrived into the area, and he was out in the yard with a handgun, pacing around. We were able to get his family on the phone and evacuate them out of the house. We went back in the house, came out with a rifle with a scope on it, made some threats against our deputies. We had him contained. Unfortunately, at that point, he fired a couple rounds into the ground in front of our deputies. He didn't hit them, and our guys didn't shoot him at that point. We had a PA system. We were trying to talk him into putting the gun down. Instead, he raised the gun and fired a couple rounds at our officers that were here. And when he fired the rounds, our officers fired back, and the round struck him, and he died from his wounds.
I'm going to get a mosquito off your face
hell
there.
that is?
Oh, they're friggin' buzzers.
They're all over
out
the
here.
place.
Yeah. What do you mean you had him contained? You had him
We had
sealed
we
off?
had officers in the street. We had him contained in his yard. He was armed with a handgun and a rifle. We asked him to put the weapons down. He fired a couple rounds into the ground. After firing some into the air before that, we told him to put the guns down. Instead, he raised the guns and fired a gun at our deputies, fired a round or two at our deputies, and our deputies returned fire, and the rounds that our deputies fired struck him and killed him.
Do you know how many deputies fired at this point?
At this point, we don't know. We expect 2, maybe 3, the ones that were here. And it all happened simultaneously at the same exact time, so they were all making the same decision at the same moment.
Yeah, you mentioned the handgun and the rifle with the scope on it. Which one was he shooting with at the time?
He was shooting with the handgun at the time, and when he was shooting with the handgun, he fired a couple rounds into the ground in front of him. At that point, we didn't fire on him, and he was asked to put the gun down over PA system. He saw our officers around. He raised the gun up and fired towards our officers in a patrol car, and that's when the other deputies that were here simultaneously made the same decision to fire upon him, and the rounds that were fired at him struck him, and he died from wounds.
And you made the comment already. You, in your opinion, from what you know already, you would say a certain amount of restraint was used by the deputies.
Yeah, I mean, our deputies used a lot of restraint in that they didn't shoot when he had pointed the gun at him earlier and fired rounds in the air and fired into the ground in front of him. At that point, they hadn't fired any rounds yet, but when he fired at our deputies after being told numerous times to drop the gun, our officer simultaneously fired back, and those rounds hit him.
Okay.